Welcome to Spooky Ass Shit. I am your host, Eric Dwinells, and joining me again tonight as we wrap up this story that we started last week is Emily Ferguson.
Yeah, I'm here for this, I guess, huh?
You sound so excited.
Oh boy. Well, I'm assuming there's an exciting conclusion because it's been pretty well fucked so far.
Yeah, it gets crazier. Don't worry.
Oh my god.
Maybe not crazier, but it at least maintains its momentum.
It maintains its level of insanity.
Yeah.
Sure. Good. All right. Great.
So,
yikes.
I will say the worst parts are over.
Okay. Good.
So
that's pretty bad for a worst part. So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely listen to the first part of this episode series if you have not. But we're just going to dive right into it after I tell you about the website, spookyas.com or spookyassshit.com. They both take you to the same place. That is the show's blog page. From there, you can listen to each and every episode, including the ones no longer available on iTunes. You can also find links to all of our social media. We are at spookyasshit on Instagram, and you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/spookyas. Now, Emily, a quick recap. This young man, Daniel LaPlante,
mm-hmm.
was arrested for basically holding a family hostage while dressed and painted like an Indian warrior,
mm-hmm.
Wielding a hatchet.
Yep.
In Pepperell, Massachusetts.
Yep.
And he was arrested in 1986.
Yep.
And he was arrested and was going to be tried as a juvenile. Then they decided to try him as an adult. Because he was going to be tried as an adult, he was able to get bailed out of prison. Yep. His mother mortgaged her house to pay that bail. While he was awaiting trial for this,
really fucked
hostage,
up weird thing.
Yeah, hostage taking crime. He went out and murdered his neighbors, a young family, a pregnant mother, and her 2 children. Yep. Leaving the father to be the lone widower, the lone survivor who was not home at the time.
Thanks.
And that's basically where we left our story off.
Yeah,
and
the dog had led the cops to the guy's house.
Right, to the LaPlante home. Yes. So I kind of just spoiled it because I said that Daniel was the killer, but we actually don't know that for a fact yet.
Right.
Because, the dog led him there, but other people live in the house and maybe something weird. It's just a weird.
Clearly his mom is a complete psycho. So cool.
The day following the murders, after the dog, because remember they waited till the next day to bring the second dog back.
Right.
That's the dog that led them.
Took over for Mike, the dog. Yes.
Correct. Led them to the LaPlante house. The police, knock on the door and say, "Hey, where's Danny LaPlante?" And they're told that he's not home. He's at the library being tutored. So they go over to the Pepperell Public Library, and they talk to Danny, but Danny denies any involvement in the killings, insisting that he had been home at the time of the murders watching MTV.
Okay.
He said that he didn't know much about the murders. The first thing that he had heard about them was when he and his stepfather watched the news together, and they heard of the murders, and then they pulled out a map to see where Saunders Road was. Although, again, that seems a little strange because it was literally right behind their house.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is, like I said, there is probably like a good half mile of woods between the 2 houses, but it is like literally, I know because when I discovered this story, I went there, of course.
Oh, yeah. I actually passed by the public library in Pepperell yesterday.
Yeah. So I went to the LaPlante house.
Sure.
And I went to the house where I didn't go up the driveway or anything, so I didn't, like I said, you actually can't see the house from the road. I
wonder if the same house is actually still standing.
The LaPlante house is. It looks the same as the one in the newspaper pictures.
Whoa, freaky.
Yeah. So,
right.
But that's how I spent some of my quarantine time, taking little road trips like that. But yeah, it's there. So it's not like they're like right next door neighbors that they definitely would have known.
Right.
But it's close enough that you wouldn't be like, oh, I've never heard of this street. Where could it be? It'd be like if you didn't know of a street like 3 blocks away from yours.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Maybe even less than that. But anyway. The police officer was asked to describe LaPlante's demeanor during the interview at the library, and the officer said that he was jumpy, he was edgy, he appeared nervous, He had a bead of sweat, a line of sweat developing along his mustache line, and his voice was calm, but his body seemed nervous.
Sure.
Police ended their interview there, but later that afternoon they went to the LaPlante home to see if Danny would come into the station for further questioning. They were greeted by Danny's mother, Elaine Moore, and police told Mrs. Moore that they wanted to talk to Danny and that they would bring him down to their HQ. And Moore said that she wouldn't allow Danny to go anywhere, and that if they wanted anything else, that they should talk to her attorney, who she happened to be on the phone with at that very moment.
Interesting.
So she handed the phone to the police.
Okay.
And when the officer picked up, he explained what was going on, but he was interrupted by the family's attorney, a man named Robert Casey Jr., and he said that he said, I would have to be an idiot to let him to go down to that school and answer questions unaccompanied by an attorney. The officer asked if the attorney would accompany Danny for questioning, and Mr. Casey said, do you have a search warrant, trooper? Do you have an arrest warrant? The answer to both of those questions was no, so the police were forced to leave empty-handed.
Whoopsie.
But not for long. Later that night, they did, in fact, get their warrants, and they returned at around 7:30 p.m., and they were once again greeted at the door by his mother, Elaine, and as they were speaking to her, they heard Danny jump out of the second-story window and flee into the woods behind his house.
Well, that's not suspicious.
Yeah.
Yikes.
This turn of events set off a massive manhunt, including at least 100 officers and helicopter search units.
Hey-o.
He was next seen by a teenager named Jonathan Lang, who answered a knock at the door of his Pepperell home late on the afternoon of December 3rd to find LaPlante standing there, demanding at gunpoint to be let in.
Ew.
Lang refused, quickly shut the door, and ran to call the police.
Damn.
LaPlante fled.
Wow. Ballsy move.
Next, LaPlante is believed to have broken into another home and to have stolen 2 handguns and a box of bullets.
Ew.
Police recovered LaPlante's mid-length leather jacket at the home that he apparently had traded out to steal a warmer coat that belonged to someone in the home before he again fled off into the woods.
Sure.
LaPlante then broke into the home of a Pepperell woman named Pamela Makela in search of food. But while he was there, the woman came home.
Oh, dear.
At gunpoint, she said. He ordered her to sit down. When the phone rang, he told her to answer it, but he stood next to her, pointing his revolver at her temple.
Jeez Louise.
Her aunt was calling, Makela testified, to warn her that a young man was being sought in her area and to urge her to lock her doors.
Yeah, whoops.
So then Makela says that LaPlante asked me if I knew who he was, and I said yes. He asked me what's going on out there, and I said the police are everywhere, and that he was all over the newspapers. That's when he got real nervous, and he said, is it about that Townsend murder? And I said, yes. And he said, I didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Then he said, do you remember about December 8th last year? Referencing the attack on the Bowden family.
Oh.
But Makela claimed not to know what he was talking about. He then demanded that they get into her van and that she drive him to Fitchburg.
Okay. Jesus.
Makela said that as they were driving, she began to fear that Danny planned to kill her.
Yeah.
At one point, she noticed him scanning the road outside the passenger window. As she approached a stop sign atop a hill, she slowed the van down to about 10 to 15 miles per hour. While Danny was busy looking out the window, Makela jumped out of the vehicle.
Ew.
When she rolled over and looked up from the pavement, she said, she saw Danny move to the driver's seat and drive off, making a right-hand turn.
Great. Awesome.
Police officer Charles Nelson had spotted LaPlante at 5:04 p.m. driving on Park Street in Air in the stolen van. Nelson said he started to chase the van, and eventually LaPlante jumped out and fled into a local lumberyard. The police that had been searching all night for him surrounded the lumberyard and spotted LaPlante hiding beneath a large industrial dumpster. We just told him, "You're not going to get out." So he came out and laid down on the floor for us, said the officer who actually arrested him. Because LaPlante was believed to be armed and dangerous, they approached cautiously, but Danny did not attempt to resist arrest. He did, however, have a loaded gun tucked into his underwear.
Jeez.
On the show, he's actually caught in a barn on the lumberyard.
Okay.
And when they arrest him, he's laughing, but that's not
well.
noted in any of the reports. So I don't think that part happened exactly the way they say it did, but
yeah.
Now there's some support for Danny, and there's also some people kind of talking shit about him. LaPlante's lawyer and LaPlante's relatives did not see a monster. They considered him actually a confused youth who just simply was not capable of the brutality the authorities say that he perpetrated. I have known the kid for 4 or 5 years now, and I have as much fear of him as I do my maiden aunt, said his attorney, Robert Casey.
That's a weird thing to say, but cool.
I can imagine he's going to be painted as an ogre, but with me, he's always come across as a quiet, reticent kid.
Yeah, that's not suspicious.
And the newspaper says, reticent was not one of the words neighbors used or police used to describe LaPlante. Strange was one. Disturbed was another. When you saw Danny, you watched him, said Elaine Aho, a neighbor of LaPlante's. He's earned his reputation. He was a troublemaker from day one. Other neighbors described Danny as always a little scary, always a problem.
Ew.
Jill Jerry, another neighbor who runs a greenhouse with her husband Jim, recalls that they hired Daniel LaPlante when he was just about 6 years old, paying him small change to pick stones from the fields where they grew pumpkins and squash. Jill said that she knew something was wrong when the little boy smashed all the pumpkins and squash.
Oh.
It was the beginning of a bad reputation that has stuck and flourished.
Yikes.
Patrick McGowan, who was a schoolmate of LaPlante's, said, the guy was never really all that friendly. He never liked to go to parties, and he never really talked much. His lawyer, Casey, disputes the picture being painted by neighbors. He said that LaPlante comes from a loving, caring household where he lived with his mother, Elaine, and his stepfather, and several brothers and sisters. Casey said LaPlante's mother works in a business products company, and his stepfather works for a plastics firm. They are both salt of the earth kind of people, said Casey. Others disagree with that description of the LaPlante home. Reports from the time note that the house looked run down. The outside looked like a junkyard mixed with the world's saddest petting zoo. Inside, police noticed the beds had no frames. They were just mattresses on the floor. They also discovered numerous pornographic magazines in several rooms of the house.
Well, there you go.
There's also an incident. I forgot to include this in the notes, but a couple weeks before the murder, the stepfather found a gun in the laundry.
Okay.
And it turned out that it was Danny's, but Danny just was like, oh yeah, I bought that a couple weeks ago. No big deal.
Okay.
And the dad was like, all right.
How do we know that?
Because they mentioned it.
Oh, they mentioned it. Okay.
The parents mentioned it. They're like, oh yeah, now that you mention it, we did find this gun.
Okay.
But we didn't really think it was.
They really might just be that actually clueless about their psycho kid.
Yeah. So there's a little twist here that happens. This is a big story, lots of twists and turns.
My goodness, though.
There's a man serving time in a prison in Salem, Massachusetts.
Mhm.
This is a man named Larry Brocklebank.
Sure.
And he's in there for forging checks. But he's kind of like a career dirtbag criminal.
Well, I'm sorry, hold on. His name is Brocklebank, and he's in there for forging checks, as in, like, broke a bank. Neat. Okay, wow. Little on the nose. Again, totally made up. Go on.
But he's served time in other prisons, and he's seen how the prison system works and everything, and he gets an idea. He remembers when he was in Florida in prison
Oh, boy.
that he was able to get his sentence reduced because he was kind of like pen pals with this other convict, and this other convict would like talk about crimes that he had done, and so Brocklebank was able to get some time off his sentence by turning in those letters.
Okay.
So he says, I'm going to write to this kid, the 16-year-old kid, or 17 at this point,
Yeah.
and I'm going to befriend him. I'm going to say, hey, my lawyer can help you out, but you got to tell me some of the details of what we got to know what we're working with. But my lawyer will totally help you out. He got me off in Florida. He'd get you off to up here. And just, trying to be his friend, basically, and get details about the crime. LaPlante did fall for this ruse, and he did become pen pals with this man. And he wrote back letters that Brocklebank did turn over to investigators. And Brocklebank had asked like what Danny knew that the police had on him.
Yeah.
And his response to that was, I have no idea what the state police have. And then they found some evidence connecting Danny to the crime scene. The stuff in the woods, the shirt that was wrapped, the sign was wrapped, came from the LaPlante household. The mother admitted this, although she had originally said it was her husband's. Then she said it was her husband's, but sometimes the family like shared clothes, so anybody could have been wearing it.
Okay.
When they were serving their search warrant, they found the clothes that Danny was described by his brothers as having worn that day, including a sock that was soaking wet.
Okay.
That they believe got wet when he was drowning Abby and she was fighting for her life.
Good Lord. All right.
And there's going to be a little more evidence that turns up. But one thing that they didn't find was the gun used to shoot Mrs. Gustafson. So in the letter, this Brocklebank says, like, hey, will the police find the gun? Like, where's the gun or whatever?
Yeah.
So Danny's response to that was, they won't find a gun. I was alone. They've got nothing on me. And in another letter, he says they have not yet found the gun and they never will find it.
Okay.
So he turns in those letters to the police, and the DA is like, stop writing to him right now, because we haven't made any kind of deal with you.
Yeah.
And we don't want people thinking we're doing some kind of like shady stuff here, and we have a good amount of evidence against him, so we probably don't need it. So thank you, but no thank you.
Yeah.
But Brocklebank was like, well, I've got 4 more letters I haven't even opened from him. So you just take those. And they're like, okay, we're going to take them, but we're like, stop doing this.
Guaranteeing you anything, yeah.
So the judge on the case hears about this, and the judge says, yeah, we're not going to allow those letters to be used in evidence.
Sure.
So they said they order the letters sealed until after the trial, those final 4
crazy.
letters. 5 months after the murders, the Townsend police chief gets a phone call at 2 a.m. from LaPlante's lawyer asking him to meet him in the LaPlante family yard.
What?
There, in the backyard, he is met by LaPlante's mother, Elaine, her husband, David, and the family's attorney, Robert Casey Jr. The chief is then led to a junked Jeep Cherokee parked on the grass. In the glove compartment, they find a pistol, a holster, and a gun belt.
Okay.
This happens to be the murder weapon from the Gustafson case. It was found by one of Danny's brothers earlier in the day, and I guess they called the lawyer and asked what they should do, and the lawyer was like, let's just let the police have this, and maybe we'll get some brownie points for being good gun in. And also, this gun, it would come out through testimony later, was actually stolen from a neighbor of LaPlante's because he was just robbing everybody up and down
Oh,
the street.
yeah.
So this guy, Raymond Bindle, testified that two guns were stolen from his home, including a pistol and a revolver, which Danny had both because he used the pistol to shoot Mrs. Gustafson, and he used the revolver when he was kidnapping Pamela Makela
Oh, right.
for her
Jeez.
Jeep. So let's just review the evidence that we have against Danny, which includes evidence that LaPlante had broken into a nearby home to steal the handguns, we just talked about,
Right.
and that casings from that gun found during the police search of LaPlante's home matched casings of bullets used to kill Priscilla Gustafson. Okay, so remember how I mentioned that LaPlante was acquitted for an alleged sexual attack on a 14-year-old girl?
Right.
Well, the police believe that this is further proof that he was involved in the attack because in the Gustafson case, the section of he wore condoms, and
weird.
he snipped off the end where the semen was because after this trial for raping the 14-year-old, he was aware that semen could be used to tie you to a sexual assault.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Now, this was before DNA, but they were still looking at like secretor types and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So there were still some traces of yourself that they could pick up on from these condoms.
Wow. And that was his solution.
Yeah.
Weird.
The 13-year-old brother of Daniel, Matthew LaPlante, testified against his own brother, saying that when he came home from school on the day of the murders at about 2:45, his brother was not home. Nor was Daniel home, the boy said, when he returned briefly from a friend's house at 4 p.m. to get a game. The eldest brother, Stephen, agreed that Danny wasn't home that afternoon and that he actually heard him come home at about 5 o'clock using the back door, the same door the dog had tracked to.
Oh, right.
Now, the thing about him not being home, remember, Danny said that he was home all day watching MTV.
Right.
And there was also a little side note on that article that said that the police planned to get a log from MTV of all the videos they showed to find out which videos could have inspired this murder.
Oh, you're kidding. Well, it was 86, wasn't it? Or 87?
Yeah.
Oh, my
That doesn't come up again during the trial, but interesting side note.
No kidding.
It had to be that he was depraved by these music videos.
Exactly. Oh, my gosh. Like, who would they have picked in 87? Well, there's so many choices.
So, and also, of course, as we mentioned, the pistol that was used to kill Priscilla was found in the glove compartment of a car at LaPlante's house.
Was that the Jeep that he stole then?
No, he didn't steal a Jeep. He stole a VW van.
Oh, that's
Yeah, but he abandoned that. Yeah.
Okay.
So during his trial, Danny smirked all the way through the trial and wouldn't make eye contact with anyone.
Gross.
He was found guilty and sentenced to consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole.
Cool. End of story, right?
Yeah, mostly. After the trial, the last 4 written letters to inmate Bricklebank were finally released.
Oh, yeah.
The first letter, dated January 15th, says that, quote, "I'm more than willing to cooperate. Just tell me what you need to know. I'm worried after killing 3 people and more charges from before." And then apparently he ran out of ink and he needed a new pen, but that's separate.
That's pretty straightforward.
In a second letter, dated January 19th, he complains of being bored in prison and asks for money for television and to buy food because he thinks the guards spit in his food. He goes on saying, "I would be more than willing to cooperate with your lawyer, but I murdered 2 kids and a lady. Can he still help?"
Well, then, that's pretty straightforward.
The third letter says that he would like to talk to him by telephone because he thinks the guards might be reading his letters when he goes to the prison gym.
Well, probably somebody's reading your letters. It's jail.
Yeah. His fourth letter says, "It's hard to take my mind off things. I'm looking at 3 life sentences for killing. 4 if rape proves plus more."
Yeah, that stressed you out a little. Sorry. Tough times.
Yeah.
Jesus. So, okay. So trial ended in 88, 87?
I believe that's, 88 would be right, I think.
Okay, because that would have been a year after. That makes about sense. Okay. What's going on now?
Well, interesting you ask. So he's been busy in jail filing lawsuits against the prison.
Okay.
And the first ones that he filed were in 2000, that saying that he wanted to be put he was put in segregation for concerns over his safety. But he sued them because he couldn't have access to the prison law library anymore.
Okay.
And he complained that his rights were being restricted because he had been getting sent porn from the outside, but prison officials always confiscated it.
Okay. So his complaint is that they're not letting him have his porn?
Yeah, in this one. And that he didn't have access to the law library. And there must have been some kind of merit to this, or they were just sick of dealing with him, because they actually did award him a small sum in 2002 for being deprived of his rights.
Okay.
And his lawyers got almost $100,000 in fees.
Ew. Wow. All right.
But in 2013, this is when he discovers religion.
Oh boy.
And this is, when most people go to prison, they become either like Jesus freaks, or maybe they join like a Muslim brotherhood or something. Those are the big 2 in prison, I think. But not for Daniel. He decided that he was going to become Wiccan.
Which is a really weird choice for somebody in prison. Well, okay, so why?
Well, he started out as a Satanist.
Okay.
But then he said, you know what?
Different.
No, I'm going to take a little bend here and become a Wiccan. And he claimed that his rights were being violated again because the prison was not allowing him to have what he needed to worship in the proper way.
Which was, in this case?
Well, he said, let's see. He said that the prison denied him certain essential oils, robes, and carrot cake, all which were very necessary for his rituals.
Oh, man. Yep. Good. Cool.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean,
now,
it's not any stupider than any of the other accommodations, so fine.
Now, just a couple of years ago, he was in the news again because he was appealing his case to get a reduced sentence.
The fuck? Are you kidding me? All right.
And he said in court, "Words cannot fully capture what I have done. I murdered 3 innocent people. Because of me, a 5-year-old boy will never turn 6. There's a 7-year-old girl who will never turn 8. Because of me, a woman will never be able to give birth to her 3rd child. I robbed an unborn child of its first breath. I do not have the words to fully express my profound sorrow, but I am truly sorry for the harm that I have caused. And from the very essence of who I am, from the depth of my soul, I am sorry."
All right. Have fun in jail, though.
Yeah, the judge rejected his appeal, ordering him to spend 3 life sentences behind bars.
Good for everybody. By the way, I have been stress doodling this whole time.
I was wondering what all these notes were you were taking.
It is epic.
So that's really it so far for Daniel LaPlante, although I'm sure at some point he'll be in the news again.
Yeah.
With his bizarre lawsuits and everything against the prison. But I want to go back to talk about the Gustafson family a bit and talk about their funeral, because I think it's nice to kind of give them the final say when I do these kinds of stories. So, in the red brick church where Priscilla Gustafson had taught Sunday school to little children, her husband, Andrew, told mourners, "Never ever say that this was God's will.
Ooh.
God loved us and showered us with all the good things. I know God is crying and mourning today too.
Oh.
What Priscilla and Abby and Billy and I had can never be taken away. Every day we hugged and kissed each other and told each other how much we loved each other. Many times a day we told each other how much we loved each other. Nothing could ever be better. Our love is greater and stronger than any evil. Our only memorial can be to love each other as much as they loved us." Now, Mr. Gustafson would go on to remarry before he passed away in 2014. So he wasn't there to go to Daniel LaPlante's, petitioning for a reduced sentence. But his second wife, Carol, appeared in court and spoke on his behalf. And she says that even on his deathbed, Andrew Gustafson could not forgive Daniel LaPlante. And then she said, "Do not let this man out. He should rot in prison."
Yeah.
And that is finally the end of this crazy story.
That is a crazy story. And yeah, how the fuck had we not heard about this? That is insane.
Yeah. I really don't know how this hasn't captured more national news or anything. I mean,
Did it at the time?
I don't know, but you hear about it on other, now that I know what I'm looking for, I've found other true crime, stories about it and stuff like that. But to have gone this long and literally when I was watching that show, Your Worst Nightmare, season 2, episode 1, I was like, this is not true. And it turns out that the way they told it kind of isn't true, maybe. But
they vamped it up a little, which is
it's
crazy.
Not as far off as you would think.
Well, yeah, and it's crazy that they bothered to vamp it up at all because it's pretty crazy on its own.
Yeah.
You don't need to add the wedding dress. It's already psycho.
And one more little note from the newspaper I forgot to add in there. Yeah. One of the newspapers said, I said there were some discrepancies about how Danny was dressed when he was keeping the Bowden family hostage.
Right.
No newspaper says that he was wearing the wedding dress. That was only on the TV show.
Okay.
But one newspaper did say that he was wearing girls' clothes.
Okay.
But most of the newspapers say he was dressed like an Indian.
All right.
Another news story said that he was wearing a ninja mask.
Okay.
But his lawyer actually wrote in to dispute this newspaper and said, "Excuse me, he was dressed as an Indian and he was wearing makeup."
Wow. That's a really important thing to clarify, I guess.
Gotta make sure you get that right.
Wow. That's a doozy right there. It ain't no Bugs Bunny, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Well that's... I mentioned, and perhaps you need a picture of what I have created out of stress while you were telling me this story, that I have stress doodled an entire sheet of paper into little swirls. So, that's what you've done to me. Thank you.
Your line work is getting very good.
Thank you. Holy shit, man. All right. Well, I'm going to look up a bunch more information about that because that is very much that's an awesome overview and it has piqued my interest even further.
Yeah, of course I'll be putting pictures on the Instagram there, and some that I took on my little trip. It's a little weird. Townsend is a small town.
Yeah.
And actually, the stuff about the Bowden family, that might not even be their name, because different papers gave different names, and then they have a completely different name on the TV version.
Oh, so maybe.
So I wonder if there's trying to hold some privacy or whatever. And with old newspapers, they usually say oh, this happened at this address, and that's how you can find where these things happened.
Yeah.
I had a little trouble finding this place in Pepperell. But the Townsend homes, I did find the Daniel LaPlante's house.
Yeah.
But it's like just a residential street
Yeah.
with an antiques mall at the end of it, by the way.
Ooh.
Didn't get to go to it, but to know for future trips.
I don't know which one's there. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So but it's like a very residential street, so I didn't want to get out and like start taking pictures and all that stuff.
Oh yeah,
but
sure.
Did sneak a few drive-by ones.
Yeah.
And the other house, like I said, you can't see from the street, and I'm not gonna pull into someone's driveway and be like, I'm gonna take pictures of your murder house. Like,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Like,
So,
I'm sure they really want to avoid that. Yeah.
yeah, but I did look on Google Maps just to see, because I could get a feel for how far it was driving it.
Sure.
But I wanted to see like what was the distance between the two houses. So I found a couple good, Google satellite views that I'll try to post that will show that it really was. They were basically parallel to each other.
Just like through the woods a little bit.
Through the woods, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh,
but I mean, that's a crazy story, and he's saying that nobody, and this was a hot debate in the debates for Massachusetts elections, is should we have life sentencing without parole?
Right.
And
you gotta be
but this is one of those cases, like, he's not right, like, no matter, I mean, obviously, but no matter how you cut it, like, he couldn't stop himself, like, he was awaiting trial.
Yep.
For another very serious crime. He was only out of jail for like he'd been in that juvenile center for 10 months.
Right.
And this happened 12 months after. So he was only out for a couple months.
Well,
and
also,
in that
whole time, yeah, he was being like taken care of in that whole time.
Yeah. But also planning to commit these crimes, like going into houses, stealing guns, like.
Right.
No.
Yeah. No, the whole time he was out, he was causing trouble, and the whole time he was in, he didn't get any better.
Yeah. So
yikes.
I don't know. He says it's very remorseful and all this stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, and also like the other thing with the news stories about his wanting things for like Wiccan ceremonies.
Yeah, sure.
Actual Wiccans stood up and said,
no.
So this guy has nothing to do with us.
Right.
And there are no ceremonies that we have where you need carrot cake and like this other stuff. Like, he's just talking nonsense.
Yep.
So.
Yikes. Wow. Couldn't have just, picked Christianity like all the regular psychos. Oh well.
Yeah.
That's too bad. Yikes. Well, yeah, that's a doozy right there.
So like I said, not a cute story, not a fun or funny story, but very interesting.
Very weird, and also has really particular, like, movie horror-ish elements.
Yeah.
Like, there's jump scares.
How is it not a movie, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, unrealistically bizarre. Yeah.
That's at least 2 full movies worth of plot right there.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right.
Yeah. Yikes. And nowadays, of course, we'd have to have the hour-long, like, here's us building sympathy for this psycho as he is abused in his youth. So there's that too. Yeah. Yeah. Which apparently he was. I was just glancing at Wikipedia. So. I'm sure,
like, that doesn't come from nowhere. Like, It's very rare. The only one that I hear, like, oh, we don't really know is Jeffrey Dahmer. They don't really talk about like really bad things happening to him, and his parents seem mostly on the level, although they do seem a little bit odd, so who knows what was really going on in that house. But usually it's not just that they come from some happy home and everything's okay. But so, there is that. But,
and a lot of people kill people.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. It's definitely needs to be in jail, I think. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, it's the best place.
I think most of us would agree.
Yeah.
All right, Emily. So maybe next time we'll do something. Maybe next time we'll actually do that episode we tried to do last time about the Midnight Hour.
Oh, man, I'm so sad that got trashed. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yep.
And it's my own stupidity
we'll do that
it happened. But
I would watch it again if I needed to also. That wouldn't hurt me.
All right. Maybe.
And it's coming up in October.
Yeah. Perfect time.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Emily. And everyone, just remember to share the show. Please like, comment, rate, review, all that good stuff. It really helps motivate me, especially now we're coming into October, which is normally my busy season. But I don't think it's going to be so busy this year because I don't think I'm going to be out witch finding. I just saw one of the other street performers posted that there's going to be a rule that you can't take selfies with street performers.
Well, shit.
And that's like 3/4 of my business. So, because I do perform, but especially when it gets really busy, it turns into just taking pictures. So, but as I've said on the Instagram, I do have some plans. I will be doing a series of talks about the witch trials and maybe even setting up a Patreon for that and for this podcast. Both, it'll go to support both those things. So if that's interested in a way that you want to help out, this is a year where my car lease is up, and I was really counting on that Witchfinder money.
Oh.
So it'd be really nice to have at least a little bit of that, coming my way. So if you want to support the show, you want to support me, you want to support the Witchfinder, I'll make it happen, whether it's through GoFundMe or Patreon or however we end up doing it, but I'll let you guys know. And that said, thank you again, Emily.
Glad to be here. Maybe let's do Bugs Bunny next time.
And until next time, don't be afraid.